Hello Grand Archive players. Let's answer a rules question. How do Taunt, Intercept, Stealth, Ambush, Steadfast, On-Hit, On-Kill, Cleave, and Pride work? There are a lot of keyword abilities that affect combat in this game, and today we'll take a look at almost all of them. First, let's review what a normal combat phase looks like. During a player's main phase, that player can declare an attack on a valid target to move the game into a combat phase. Valid attack targets include allies, champions, and siegeable domains. For the remainder of this video, I might say unit when referring to attackable objects for simplicity's sake. It might be slightly inaccurate strictly speaking, but it's a lot easier to say, so bear with me. When the attack declaration happens, the attacking and defending units gain certain combat rules, which I'll denote with these symbols. These combat designations will be removed at the end of the combat phase. They will also be removed if there are no more defenders or no more attacker. This could occur if something happened to one of those units that resulted in a now invalid attack. For example, if one of them left the field during combat. After a round of opportunity, retaliations will be declared. If the defending unit is awake and has at least one power, the defending player may rest the defending unit to designate it with the role of retaliating unit. Note that champions cannot retaliate using weapons. After one more round of opportunity, combat damage will be calculated. Attackers will deal damage to defenders, and retaliators will deal damage to attackers. Then, in the end of combat step, combat rules will be removed and state-based checks will be performed before returning to the turn player's main phase. Now that we understand the basics of the combat phase, let's see how each of these keywords changes things, starting with Taunt. Taunt is a static ability. Objects with Taunt that are awake must be attack if able rather than objects without Taunt. If there are multiple objects with Taunt, the attacking player may attack any of them. Note that Taunt only affects the attack declaration and will not affect an ongoing combat phase. That means that when an attack is declared, then a unit with Taunt wakes up, or if an existing object gains Taunt, or if an object with Taunt enters the field after the attack declaration, it's too late for that Taunt to have any effect. The Taunt unit must have Taunt and be awake at or before the attacker's main phase. Next, Intercept. Intercept is a triggered ability that triggers upon the champion becoming the target of an attack. Being a triggered ability means that it uses this stack and can be responded to. When this trigger resolves, the attack target will be redirected to the intercepting unit. That is, the defending role will be reassigned to the intercepting unit. Similarly to Taunt, the intercept unit must be available to intercept when the attack declaration happens. If Intercept triggers and the intercepting unit leaves the field or otherwise becomes an invalid target, before the trigger resolves, the Intercept trigger will fail. Remember that if the defending unit leaves the field during combat, in this example after Intercept had successfully resolved, the attacking role will also be removed. Note that there are some effects that can also redirect attacks in a similar way as Intercept does. Read the abilities carefully to see how these individual cards work. Although Intercept only triggers on attack declaration, these redirect abilities can have different conditions and occur at different timing. Unblockable is a keyword that means that the attack ignores Taunt and does not trigger Intercept. Unblockable attacks must still be declared on an otherwise valid attack target, and can be redirected by effects that aren't Intercept. Stealth. Units with Stealth cannot be the target of attacks unless the attacking unit has True Sight. This also means that a unit with Taunt cannot functionally taunt attacks that don't have True Sight, and a unit with Intercept cannot intercept attacks that don't have True Sight. Units can also gain Stealth during combat. Besides a combatant leaving the field, this is the most common way to make an ongoing attack invalid. State-based checks will remove attacking and defending rolls if the defending unit has Stealth, and the attacking unit does not have True Sight. If the defending unit gains Stealth during the combat phase, the attacking player must gain True Sight in response if the attacking unit doesn't already have it. Any point afterward will be too late. In this example, if the defending player used smoke bombs on the attack target, the attacking player would need to respond with using Eye of Argus. If Smoke Bomb's ability resolves before Eye of Argus's does, the attack will cease, and gaining True Sight at that point will not reinstate the attack. Note that Stealth does not affect retaliations. If a unit that is defending and retaliating gains Stealth, it will be removed as a defender but not as a retaliator, and will deal damage as normal in the combat damage step. Likewise, an attacker with Stealth is not protected from being retaliated against. Units with Ambush may be declared as retaliators even if they are not the defending unit. They must still rest to do so. Each retaliating unit will deal damage simultaneously in the combat step, along with the attacker. In the case that there are multiple units dealing combat damage to the same attacker, the attacker gets to choose the order of damage. We'll return to this idea a bit later. Units with Steadfast don't need to rest to be declared as retaliators. They may also be declared as retaliators even while rested. This means that effectively they can retaliate any number of turns as long as they can survive each combat. Naturally, Steadfast pairs very well with Ambush. Now let's move on to damage triggers. On-Hit will trigger after damage is dealt and resolve at the end of combat step. A unit that dealt at least one damage in that step will trigger any on-hit abilities. Note that if the damage is entirely prevented, on-hits will not trigger. On-hits will trigger on dealing damage to siegeable domains, not just units. Also note that on-hit will only trigger on combat damage dealt during the combat damage step, and not on any other damage, even if it was dealt during the combat phase. For example, the on-hit of this Blazing Direwolf, or this Indiscriminate Gyre, will not trigger any on-hit effects. On-hit effects will trigger from retaliation damage. On-kill abilities trigger when combat damage dealt by that unit causes a defending unit to be destroyed in the end of combat step. Like on-hit, this can trigger from lethal retaliation, and only triggers from combat damage. Unlike on-hit, on-kill cannot trigger from destroying non-unit objects like siegeable domains. Note that since on-kill only triggers from the damaged object being sent to the graveyard, dealing lethal damage to Regalia allies such as the Majestic Spirit cannot trigger on-kill abilities, as Regalia go to banishment and never the graveyard. Also, as I mentioned before, if multiple units deal combat damage to the same unit, the player controlling the unit receiving that damage determines the order the damage is dealt. For example, in this situation where Veteran Soldier attacked the retaliating Imperial Spy with retaliating Cloaked Executioner, the attacking player would choose which of those retaliators would deal the lethal damage, and thus whether or not the on-kill would trigger. Cleave. Attacks with Cleave behave a bit differently from normal attacks. Attacks with Cleave do not target a unit, rather they choose a player and designate all attackable objects controlled by that player as defenders and deals full damage to each of them. This means that an attack with Cleave does not interact with Taunt, since the attack isn't targeting a specific unit. It does not trigger Intercept, since a champion is not being targeted for an attack, and does not interact with Stealth, since there is no particular unit being targeted for an attack. All units assigned as defenders by a Cleaving attack may retaliate Fable. Cleaving attacks can trigger on-hit or on-kill effects for each unit dealt damage as appropriate. An ally with Pride does not obey its controller unless that player controls a champion of at least the appropriate level. Disobedient allies cannot declare attacks or use activate abilities. Any static or triggered abilities will still work as normal. Also, Obedience has a slightly unique interaction with Intercept. A disobedient unit with Intercept will trigger, but the trigger will fail to redirect the attack upon resolution. The fact that it does trigger, though, does provide opportunity to make the unit obey at fast speed, such as by gaining levels. In this example, Sylvie can gain enough levels at fast speed to meet the Pride requirement, so Intercept resolves successfully this time. And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.